Um, just like to say that a recording and certificates will be sent out after the session. And if you have any questions, please let us know in the chat box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Without further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce Vaughan. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was just talking to you through the chat box because your sound was going in and out there.
Okay, apologies. Yeah, it was just a note to say about the certificate and recording that they will be sent out after the session.
Exactly, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I hope you can, well, I'm not so happy about you seeing me, but I hope you can hear me anyway. Welcome to this session. It's called Making Up for Lost Time, helping students to learn and remember new words more effectively. So how are you today? Hopefully well. Everybody's saying hello. We've got lots of different people from lots of different places, which is great. And I hope that you are all well in these difficult circumstances of coronavirus. I don't know how it's been broken in your own countries, but everybody is very excited about the new vaccine that seems to have made an appearance. And people are overexcited in the UK, thinking that everything is going to be sorted by Christmas, but I very much doubt that. But anyway, it is a good sign, and it's going to hopefully signal the end of all this difficult period and times of disruption in terms of our lives as teachers and our students' lives, with the closing of schools and lockdowns and all the rest of it. I'm actually speaking to you today from here, which is where are we? I haven't started the thing properly. This is where I live. This is Deddington, which is a tiny village in the middle of Oxfordshire, in the middle of England. And I'm just off the map, just about here. The weather today is not as nice as this. This must have been taken in the summer. It's horrible, dark and grey out there. Very soon probably to be nightfall. So this is where I live with my family, and my writing partner, Sue Kay, is just down the road in Oxford, the city of Oxford itself. I've been involved in teaching languages for 40 years. I celebrated, if that's the right word, my 60th birthday this year. And my whole life has been dedicated to either teaching, training, or publishing in some way or other. And with Sue, for the last 20 years or so, we've been involved in writing various courses and materials to teach English as a foreign language. Most recently, we were involved in writing the second edition of Focus. And you will have to forgive me if many of the examples I use in this session today are based on things that we've done in Focus. It's been my life for the last 7 or 8 years. And as my wife, I'm sure, will tell you, I don't talk about anything else. Welcome to the session. Just a quick thing about what I believe in. A lot of what we've done in Focus, and indeed what I believe in terms of any of my teaching over the last 40 years, is that there is, as we all know, a very loose correlation between what we teach and what the students learn. But one of the things I feel very strongly about is that we have to do at least 3 things in the classroom for any learning to take place. And that is that we have to motivate our students, we have to help them with memory, and that's particularly relevant to today's session. And we have to make sure that we remember language exists to make meanings and give them meaningful things to do in the classroom, using language to exchange meanings between themselves. So that's the sort of basis, the building blocks on which I do everything. But today we're going to focus particularly on vocabulary, which is an area I'm very, very interested in, and a problem. And the next slide really illustrates the problem better than anything. And so I'd like you to look at this carefully. This is from Paul Nation's book, a recent book called How Vocabulary is Learned. And I think it starkly shows you the issues we have. What we're talking about here is the fact that by and large, students go quite well and progress quite nicely up to the sort of pre-intermediate, intermediate level. But after that, they start to flounder, and it's all to do with the frequency of vocabulary, or vocabulary frequency, to put it in another word. So if you look at this chart here, these are words that appear in the first 1,000 words, the 1,000 most frequent words in the English language. So we're just talking about A, B, C, and D, okay? And in the first 1,000 words, for A, you get you get baby, you get cake, you get dad. Now, all students will understand those words without a problem. In the second 1,000 most frequent words, so that is words from 1,000 to 1,999, here we have another selection of words: accent, background, cable, damage. Those are also probably going to be fairly easy for our students to understand. Then we jump from the second 1,000 to the 5th 1,000. So these are the words that exist between 4,000 and 4,999. Now here we've got slightly more obscure words: abbey, badge, calf, dairy. Those are words which are in that particular 1,000 words. And I would say a lot of some intermediate students will be okay, but a lot of them might struggle with some of those words. They might know one. Then if we jump again to the 10th 1,000 words, so these are the words that are between 9,000 and 9,999, then I think even you, as if you're not a native speaker, and even some native speakers may begin to wonder a little bit. Aid and abet, you've probably heard of. Baboon, yes. Cacophony, yes. Dandelion, yes, probably okay. But those are the words that exist between 9,000 and 9,999. And then we jump massively to the 20th 1,000 words. So these are in terms of frequency, these are between 19,000 and 19,999. And here we begin to flounder. I struggle here. I do know what an abaya is. I had an idea that a binnacle was something to do with a ship. No idea about chiastic or chiastic, and no idea about dactyl. So here even native speakers flounder. The reason I'm showing you this is because I think this very clearly demonstrates the main problem with vocabulary, and it's illustrated really here. And this is what I want to just quickly mention. So as I say, intermediate students, no problem getting to 2,000, 2,500 words, because those words are everywhere. So they all learn, although in fact studies have shown that even those are difficult sometimes in some cases. But I think most people arrive at 2,000, 2,500 words without too many problems. It's the next bit. It's moving from there to the 7,500, 9,000 words that students need to know to really be B2 or C1 or upper intermediate advanced. And the problem is that those new words, those 5,000 or so new words, are not very frequent, and therefore they are not encountering them repeatedly. They don't, unlike the first 2,500 words, come for free. So this is the problem that all of us as teachers have to face up to. And as I said at the beginning, there's no silver bullet here how to actually sort this out. But I think there is the beginnings of a solution, and this is what I try to do. with my teaching. And I've divided this into 4 stations, because essentially our challenge is time. So many words to learn, too little time available. And the framework here is what I feel is important to have as a kind of a backdrop to our teaching of vocabulary. And it's this 3rd stage that I'm going to spend most of the webinar talking about. But let's quickly go through them anyway. It's a framework I've used in other talks. I think one of the things, because time is so short, is obviously to focus on the most useful words. So if you're teaching an A1 student, you will be teaching the word silly. You won't be teaching the word preposterous, because preposterous is a C1 word, whereas silly is an A1 word. So silly is the best word to be teaching. So you need to make sure that you are teaching appropriate words for the stage at which the students are at. And that goes up through the various levels, A1, A2, B1, B2, etc. Secondly, you need to try your best to make sure that the very first encounter with a word is as memorable as it possibly can be. The old adage, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, is true for people as well as true for words. So make that first encounter as memorable as it possibly can be. Then, to help the students outside the classroom, where they are not with you anymore and they've been let loose, we need to make sure that we spend time inside the classroom trying to teach effective word learning strategies. And I said that's going to be the main part of this webinar. And finally, back in the classroom, if you like, but with a link to outside the classroom. And by the way, when I'm talking about classroom, I'm talking at the moment in these circumstances about the bricks and mortar classroom, and also, of course, the remote classroom, because I'm sure most of you have been having to teach remotely with using Teams and Zoom and things like that. But this last stage is, again, incredibly important. We don't learn anything unless we encounter it repeatedly. And this is all about making sure that the students encounter these words that have been taught in the first instance over and over and over and over and over and over again, at least 7 times, maybe 10 times, maybe 20 times. It's this, again, another adage, use it or lose it. Learning is remembering, as Socrates told us. This is all practice that we forms part and parcel of what underpins focus, our material, but also it's just common sense, frankly. So let's look at this 3rd point, teaching effective word learning strategies. What can we actually do to help our students? And this is all about this old Chinese saying, which is, give a man a fish or a woman, and you feed them for a day. Teach a man or woman to fish, and you feed them for a lifetime. I quite liked this variation that I found on the internet the other day. I thought that was another interpretation of that particular adage. But moving on, I'd like you to consider what we can do. What can we actually do to help our students learn better? Now, one of the pieces of advice in a wonderful film a long time ago, actually, now it's maybe 1980s film, 90s film, Woody Allen tried to convince, or was not convinced, that memorizing a dictionary is the best way of improving your vocabulary. Other people might differ, but I think that's a long shot. That's something which only the true fanatics would try and suggest as a worthwhile goal. I think what I would like to look at is the breaking down this teaching effective word strategies into three areas, three things that we can do inside the classroom to help our students outside the classroom. The first thing is to help our students to maximize their exposure to English. They really do need to find English in all sorts of different ways outside the classroom. But that being exposed to English is only the beginning, because as well as doing that, they also need to find opportunities to use English outside the classroom. Time and time again, research has proved that just being in an English environment is a very slow way of learning. It's not very effective. The received wisdom when I started teaching, which was a time of Stephen Krashen, comprehensible input, and the idea was, you just exposed people, students, to English, and somehow it would they would suddenly, they would, as long as they understood what they were listening to or what they were reading, then eventually we'd assume. Now, this is probably true, but the eventually will be years ahead. We need to accelerate this process, and that's simply by getting students to do something with the language that they encounter. So there's a sort of thing there, and some of the researchers refer to incidental learning, which is this kind of accidental learning where we're just exposed to stuff, and then deliberate learning, which is where we do something with the language that we encounter. And students do need to be proactive when they're finding words outside the classroom. They need to turn that incidental learning into deliberate learning. Secondly, when they're out there on their own, without the comfort of the teacher, we need to equip them with skills to help improve their guesswork. So when they come across a word that they don't know, they have a good chance of guessing the correct or nearly correct meaning of that word. Good language learners make intelligent guesses, and this is a skill that can be learnt. It requires motivation, but it is possible, and we can help them with that. Of course, these days you can just ask Siri or ask Alexa, but I don't think this is as effective in the long run as gaining those sort of sub-skills of being able to work out or try to find out the meaning from previous knowledge. And then finally, we need to help students with strategies to consolidate the knowledge of the words they've learnt or they've just discovered the meaning of. Again, it's this idea of use it or lose it. We are responsible for recycling vocabulary, but the students are too. They do need to take control of trying to recycle their own vocabulary, the vocabulary that they've learnt by themselves outside the classroom. So thinking about the first point here about maximizing exposure to English, well, of course, we live in the most amazing times, and it is something which I think all of us, those of us rather who've been teaching for as long as I have, will remember the extremely poor years when it was very difficult to find English outside the classroom. I'm talking about when I first started, which would be the early 80s, mid 80s. And I was just reflecting on that as I was preparing this talk. And I was thinking, oh my God, how did I do it? It was extraordinary how little was available to students outside the classroom. If you were lucky, you might find a kind of 3-day-old UK or American newspaper or a copy of Time magazine. If you tried very carefully on your phone, not your phone, what am I saying? On your radio, you might have been able to pick up the BBC World Service or Voice of America or something like that. So there's a little bit of English there. There was absolutely no television in English, although some cinemas did show original version films. It was a difficult time to get the students to expose themselves to English outside the classroom. Now it's mad. It's impossible not to expose yourself to English. I mean, obviously, to begin with, in my lifetime, there was the beginning of satellite television, which was a huge boost all around the world, and then closely followed, of course, by the internet, which has revolutionized everything. And I put up here just a few ideas, but of course I could fill slides and slides and slides with possible ways of exposing yourself to English. It sort of comes into three areas, I think. You can expose yourself to written English, so extensive reading and intensive reading. You can expose yourself to spoken English, so extensive listening. And then there's the other more obvious thing, particularly if it's a screen, which of course is extensive viewing, or viewing and extensive viewing. And all of these and these are just some of the more popular ones, but these are all areas which you can exploit. One of the things I would start with, inevitably, as I have been involved in writing Focus, is the Pearson site itself, because if you're using something like Focus, then there's an awful lot of extra material which is available on the Pearson website, and this is all digitally mastered, so you can use it remotely as well as indeed in the classroom. One of the things I've found actually quite interesting, talking to the teachers of my children, I call them students, no, just joking. But one of the things which I found interesting, chatting to their teachers, their maths teachers, English teachers, their Spanish teachers, is how, because so many teachers have had to make the jump to teaching remotely, they are realizing how much more they could make of the digital resources back in the classroom. So when they do go back, and at the moment, again, I'm not sure about in your situation, but even though we're on lockdown here in the UK, schools are still functioning, and my kids are still going to school. And the teachers there are teaching in classrooms. They're in bubbles and they're arranged, the timetables all very complicated. But they are trying to teach in as normal a way as possible. But there's been a step change in the amount of technology which is being used. And teachers are just more confident in using digital resources and using the screens that they have in the classroom. So there's been quite a benefit, I think. And as I say, most published courses will have things which are available through the website or apps. This is a really nice app, the Pearson Practice English app, but there are other apps available, of course. Because one of the issues, of course, for the students it's all very well to have English everywhere, but it needs to be English at their level. And of course, if you're using something which is very closely tied to the course, then you can be sure that it does. The other really wonderful site, I think, is the BBC Learning English site, which isn't attached to any particular publisher, but has lots and lots of language which is measured and at appropriate levels for students. Then obviously there are all these other things you can do. YouTube is an obvious thing. Netflix, watching versions of films and series that they probably know, watching them in the original version. Podcasts, there's any number of podcasts, not very good ones actually, I must say. I think podcasts is an area that needs to be exploited for teaching English. I've used all of these. You can't probably see them, but there's a whole bunch of ones that I've used with my students, and some of them more or less successful. So I think there's a an area to develop there. But one of the things I'm embarrassed to say that I've only cottoned onto recently or in the last year or so is the fact that when you're looking at something like a TED Talk, or you're looking at something on YouTube, you can actually, I knew that you could put subtitles there, so that's great. You can, but what I hadn't realized until about a year ago was that you can control the speed of the delivery of the speaker. And I think this is really helpful for students because, at the regular speed, maybe this guy's presentation on feats of memory is going to be a little bit too difficult, but you can slow it down. Okay, it sounds a bit weird, but just slowing it down slightly enables some students to be able to follow better what's going on and get that input. So this is all possible through technology and what we have. But as I said before, there's such a vast quantity of material that it can be difficult for some students to see the wood for the trees, as we say. And my tip is to simply channel each student's particular attention onto something that they're interested in, or better still, passionate about. Each student should find the things that just interest them. So, for example, if it was my own 13-year-old son, it would be anything football. And in particular, Liverpool Football Club. So anything on the internet that was to do with that, he would be motivated to go and find. Similarly with my daughter, who's 15, she would be interested in anything to do with musical theatre, in particular lyrics, songs, and dance routines. So it's, for each of your students, it's finding their particular passion, their particular interest, and then trying to, at the beginning, guide them towards internet sites, podcasts, communities, blogs, etc., vlogs, which are specifically in the area in which they are interested. But of course, this is just giving them the raw material. As I said before, there's no point in just having this English wash over you unless you do something with it. So yes, maximize the exposure to English, but also you need to engineer ways that the students can use English outside the classroom. And I've just listed some of the things that are I feel obvious. Some of them can be done both under the writing, so they can write these things, or they can speak these things. And I think the speaking area is the area which I'm more excited about. So yes, since time immemorial, people have been keeping learning diaries or journals, writing their to-do lists in English. Now, of course, involving themselves in blogs, vlogs, discussion boards, commenting on social media posts, establishing WhatsApp groups, online communities. There's a wonderful one which where people send postcards across the world, which is really interesting. And of course, making word cards. I'll come back to that later on. But on the speaking side, there's so much more which is possible. I've just lost my, oh no, here it is. Here's my phone. I mean, a learning diary or journal, a spoken one. You can just use, your phone here. I'm just going into voice memos. So, voice memos, just one 5 minutes a week, 5 minutes a day, maybe. The students just quickly recount their learning day or their day at school, or how they're feeling, or whatever. And they can do that into a voice memo, and then they can share that or not share it. They can keep it, they can send it to you, ask you to listen to it. So there's a lot more that can be done in terms of speaking these days. Also, instead of a to-do list in their own language, a to-do list in English, but a spoken one. Vlogs, podcasts, those are possible. Social media posts, of course, they're also possible speaking wise. That's what the kids get up to all the time. All these other things. And I should also mention, actually, something which you may or may not be aware of, that the Pearson run these live classes, which are absolutely fabulous. And that's something which students and teachers indeed can get involved in outside the classroom. I think there'll be details on the Pearson website to see whether you can get involved in something like that. But they're wonderful and have recently won an Elton Award for, I think it was the one for innovation in language learning. They're well worth exploring. So look out for live classes, Pearson live classes, definitely worth investigating. In my own case, I've been doing a bit of teaching online since lockdown. And what I've been trying to work very hard on is to get my students to speak outside the classroom by doing video stories or presentations, but in particular video stories. And this is something which I've found really, really valuable. I don't know what's happened to the next slide. It's gone a bit strange. Apologies about that. I don't know what's happened to it. But these are just some examples from the speaking pages of Focus, where we get the students to think about how to tell a story. So there's a lot about how you structure it, blah, 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 blah. But then getting them to think about a time when they were in a dangerous situation, or they had a nice surprise, or they had some bad luck, or they made a mistake, or something that happened on holiday. Fairly mundane topics. A memorable day is another one up here in Focus 4. But the point being that what we try to get our students to do then is to record a version of them speaking to the camera, either their phone or to their computer. You can use Zoom and things like that. And then we have that and they can post it so that the other students can see it. Or if you're doing one-to-one, in one case I'm doing one-to-one, they send it to me. And I can then analyze that and get back to them. But all of these things here, all of these things here are all designed to get the students to use the English that they're learning outside the classroom. And they're all helpful in that sense, because as I've said several times, just having English wash over you and be exposed to it isn't good enough. We can speed things up immeasurably by helping the students or seeing opportunities to use the English that they're learning outside the classroom. So all of these and more ideas are very welcome and should be part of your teaching repertoire. Let's move to another thing which we need to help our students with. It's a second and very obvious point. How can we help our students to make informed guesses about words? How can we make them into better guessers, okay, when they're meeting this language outside the classroom and they don't have us to refer to? Well, one obvious thing is by looking at the morphology of words. Let's consider word families, and let's consider in particular the word family act. I'd like you to spend, if I can, 37.4 seconds. Think about act, okay? So here's a word family: word, words, wordy, wordier, okay? So words which have a particular stem and words which come off that stem or derive from that stem. So think about act. And I'd like you in the chat box, if you can, I'll be looking at this. I want you to bang down as many words as you can that have act at the root of that word. So I'm thinking act, action, actor, actress. Yes, we've got them. Activation, very good. Think about prefixes as well. Prefixes, suffixes, inactively, enact, very good. Active, interact, deactivate, brilliant. React, fantastic. How many do you think there are if we just think about nouns, verbs, and adjectives? How many are there, do you think? About 30? 100? Whoa! There aren't quite 100, I don't think. Maybe there are if you take in adverbs. 50. Actually, it's not quite that many. I'm probably wrong, but just doing it with myself to prepare this seminar, came up with 38. Okay, so 38 family members for act. Here are the verbs, the nouns, and the adjectives. Okay, I thought that was an interesting thing. It's something I do a lot in the classroom. I just occasionally get the students to quickly try to brainstorm words based on a root. The other way of doing it, of course, is to brainstorm words based on a particular suffix or a particular prefix, or try to start brainstorming words that are linked in another way, like compound nouns, for example. So this kind of thing, which is a fun activity, just a quick activity in the classroom, is sensitizing the students to how they might be able to guess the meaning of words just from the morphology of individual words outside the classroom. And sort of more formal work on that is done in our book. So this is a use of English lesson from Focus 3. And we have a particular focus on common suffixes. Okay, so filling out a table like this and thinking a lot about what suffixes mean, what are typical suffixes for nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So linked to this in a way, just looking at a word by itself, is of course using cognates, or what we might call true friends. That is to say, words that are very similar in your language, the language L1, shall we say, to English. And this is really useful, particularly for students who are originally European languages, whose native language is a European language. There's an awful lot of what we might call true friends, okay? Words for free, essentially. English teachers tend to get very excited about false friends. We've all heard the thing about, actually in English is not the same as actuellement in French or actuellement. Everybody gets terribly exercised about the false friends, but forget those. Think about the true friends, because there's a massive number of words, particularly if your original language is a Latinate language or if it's a Germanic language. There's an awful lot of words which are really for free. I remember, and this is how sad I am as a language learner as well as a language teacher, I remember when I went to Spain and I couldn't speak Spanish, but I could speak French. And I made a breakthrough in Spanish when I suddenly realized that all Spanish, not all, but a good proportion of Spanish adverbs were simply French adverbs pronounced in a Spanish way. So, lentement became lentamente, rapidement became rapidamente, possiblement, possiblemente, etc., etc. And so that was a massive breakthrough, and so making these links between L1 and L2, if L2 is English or another foreign language and English, this can help your students. So sensitizing them to that. There's a lot of fabulous ideas for that, by the way, in this very good book by my friend Philip Kerr. I've forgotten to put this on the bibliography. He'll kill me. But I do have a bibliography, but that's an excellent book, which can help with ideas for that. So I think exploring the morphology of words is really important. Then, of course, we've got what a lot of teachers feel very excited about, which is trying to help our students guess from the context. So not just the word itself, but what goes around the word, how the word is contained. And I think this is, of course, an important skill, and we do focus on it in Focus. So this is a particular very nice text about iconic where, this is all about, it's in the first unit of Focus 3. It's about looks, and it's about, the classic Levi jeans, white t-shirt and leather jacket, iconic sort of leisure wear or garments. And we have lots of words in there, and the students are sensitized to how they might guess the meaning of these unknown words from the context in which they are. As I say, really important to do that sort of thing. It will help them outside the classroom, but again, we come back to the problem which a lot of researchers have suggested, that it'll actually help them read something, but it won't necessarily help them learn those unknown words. They'll guess them and guess them enough to be able to get to the end of the passage, so it's helped the reading, but it hasn't necessarily helped them learn the words, because noticing a word, understanding it in the instant is one good thing, but how do you then make sure that they go back and try and learn those words? And frankly, unless they do something with those words, and a very obvious thing is to start making word cards for the words that they want, then they're not going to learn them. Those words are not going to move from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. So one of the things which I do quite a bit is something sort of light in a way, is whatever my students have been exposing themselves to outside the classroom, sounds wrong, is I get them every Friday to bring in their top 10 words. So, as I say, whatever they've been looking at, listening to, viewing, I simply ask them to note at least 10 words, at least 10 new things. And every Friday they come and they present them. These are my top 10 words. And the class, depends on how much time we've got, but the class then debates what they think are the most useful words. And maybe we put them on a cline between, really useful and not so useful. So it's a way of connecting outside the classroom with inside the classroom, and getting the students to bring words as a kind of show and tell, if you like. Show and tell is a thing which we do in primary school. But, these are my words, and then maybe try and debate why my 10 words are more useful than your 10 words or whatever. But what it does is it's a bit of fun, but it makes sure that at least some of the words that the students have encountered outside the classroom become part of their mental lexicon and are more likely to move over to long-term memory. So that's really important. And I do believe that word cards are one of the best ways of doing this. And a word card is simply, as I'm sure you know, writing the target word on one side of the card, and on the other side, simply a translation or a definition or both, or as well as that, an example sentence. So we just have these word cards and we build them up. And I know you can do this electronically. Of course, there are Duolingo and things like that you've got on your phone. But the actual physical effort of creating word cards is also part of the process. And I think it's an important part of the process. So I realize I'm running out of time slightly, which is very sad. But let's move to how do we consolidate the knowledge. And really, I've just talked a little bit about it with producing word cards. I think we owe it to our students to give them ideas on how they can memorize things outside the classroom, as well as giving them the wherewithal to record the vocabulary. Now, the memory tricks, something like this, we've done a few bits and bobs about that. This is from Focus 4, and this is I'll just read this to you. It's quite nice. It's one of the kind of tricks that people like Socrates here used to get up to learn things. How can you improve your memory? So imagine a shopping list, okay? And you've got 8 items on your shopping list. First, imagine a huge loaf of bread, and suddenly coffee squirts out of the top and makes a fountain of dark brown liquid. After a few seconds, the dark brown changes to white yogurt. The yogurt forms a river and goes under a bridge. The bridge is a stake. Some black and green olives are crossing the bridge, and some big brown eggs are chasing after them. The olives hide behind a big carton of orange juice. You lift an olive to your mouth to eat it, and it turns into an onion, which tastes horrible. That's it. You've reached the end. So that's a sort of silly way or imaginative way of trying to remember things. And there's more instances in that. So there's a little bit of training that could go on in terms of memory tricks or mnemonics to help your students. But apart from producing word cards, which I think is absolutely key, I think the next most important thing, and something which we set great store by in Focus, is indeed the word store. And this is something that we felt very, very strongly about. This is this particular thing here. And as you know, you've got your book, and then you've got your word store, which comes out the side. So it's like a third page. We really strongly believe that we should spend time helping the students to understand how they might best record vocabulary and giving them lots of different ways of doing that. This is quite nice because we're grouping food by colours. Okay, so red, orange, green, yellow, etc. So that's quite a neat way of doing it. But there are lots and lots and lots of different ways in which we can help our students to record. Matching collocations, matching antonyms and synonyms, matching words with pictures or shapes, matching words with definitions or translations, completing things, completing tables, completing diagrams, completing flowcharts, putting words on clients, putting words into categories, writing example sentences, making notes on confusing words. So things like, the difference between work and job, and then listing true friends and making connections between friends. There's millions and millions and millions of things. But as I say, the best thing probably is making your own word cards. So I'm sorry I've rushed through, but I hope there's a bit of food for thought there. Your homework this evening is to have a look at this bibliography. And I particularly, as I would say this because it's a Pearson title, but I particularly think this is excellent, how to teach vocabulary. But to be honest with you, this is also a really interesting read, the most recent one probably here. I would say that's a very interesting one, and in fact this memory activities for language learning, and the one which I forgot, which was my own friend Philip Kerr's book, translation. So sorry it's a bit of a rush in the end, but thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful, and I think I have maybe just 5 minutes or so for questions if any of you have some. So
thank you so much, Vaughan.
Okay.
Please, people, if you have questions, please do submit them. We have a few minutes to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, the name of my friend's book, Translation and Own Language Activities. Translation and Own Language Activities. How to boost learning abstract words. Oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think with abstract words, you are much more likely to use the context of a piece of text, a piece of discursive text. Obviously, it's very difficult to link them with anything. So I think using abstract words in context, some sort of literary context, is probably the best thing. Thank you for all your thanks. It's a quite passive knowledge, very struggling to make it active. Connection. Any tips for online teaching to make a quick, meaningful connection in online lessons? Well, I mean, some of the things I've been saying, really. Get the students to. It depends what software you're using. In fact, interestingly, this particular piece of software that we're using here isn't very, very interactive. I've been using a thing called Zoom, which I'm sure you're you're very familiar with, and that has a lot of chance for much more interaction. So getting your students to interact is the best thing. Do I like phrasal verbs? And how do you teach them? Well, I have any number of ways of teaching phrasal verbs. That's a whole seminar in itself. But yes, to the first part of that question, I definitely like phrasal verbs. I think they're absolutely fascinating. Oh, sorry, the name of my friend. Okay, the name of my friend is Philip Kerr. Philip Kerr. There we are. Sorry, I keep. Here he is. Oops. There we are.
Thank you so much, Vaughan. I think, sadly, we're going to have to draw to an end there.
Yes.
Once again, thank you so much for your time putting together.
You're welcome.
And presenting Vaughan. And thank you to every one of you who's attended the session. Please check out the full schedule of the Ready For webinars on English.com. We hope to see you at another session soon. Cheerio, or have a good day.
Bye. Thank you.